Hey guys, it's me CriticalCubing, and today I'll be discussing on Lookahead and how slow solving is not overrated and it's a mandatory part in the process for improving Lookahead. Kian Mansoor had made a video on slow solving being overrated and I agreed with his thoughts on the topic. However, since then I have had time to play around with different techniques and Lookahead methods, and I'm of the opinion that only turning fast is calling for disaster. Fast solves are overrated. Before anyone gets offended or misunderstands it as an attempt to call out Kian, I'm not doing anything of that sort. Kian is a good friend and he is right that only doing slow solves are overrated, but I don't think that only doing fast solves is the answer. I have come to a different conclusion, which I will share in a bit. I am not saying that Kian is wrong, I am just adding more to the topic and contributing my opinion. What is Lookahead? Oxford Dictionary uses this meaning: the action or an act of considering what is likely to happen or of calculating what can happen in the immediate future. Translating this in cubing terms, we are tracking pieces and predicting future positions while simultaneously performing turns that brings the cube to a solved state. What is the significance of slow solving in the Lookahead process? Slow solving helps in learning to look at our next pieces while we are solving our current pieces, all while we are trying not to pause. This is training our brain to keep a constant pace and consistently be on the lookout for future positions and what pieces to track. Slow solving is an imperative process for learning to look ahead. Some people may not need slow solving and Lookahead just clicks for them. However, those are outliers, and for the majority, Lookahead is something that needs to be trained. As an analogy, before we learn to walk as kids, we learn to crawl. And before we learn to run, we learn to walk. These things are a process, like climbing a staircase. Most people do not skip the process unless they are a prodigy or have innate talent which puts them in their own league. When climbing a staircase, some people might jump to the fourth stair. However, usually you keep one foot on the first step and use that as a launching pad to balance yourself, and put the other step on the second stair and continue climbing. The process of Lookahead is the same, with slow solving being part of the initial steps. Once you have learned to look ahead and can already turn relatively fast without pauses, the goal is to maintain the level of look ahead while you start turning fast. Here is where the problem occurs. When you start turning fast, you will undeniably start to pause, and your look ahead won't be as good as when you are solving at a slower pace. People seem to panic here and go back to slow solving, thinking continuing to slow solve will improve their look ahead. Using the stair analogy, if you're standing on the fourth step and you put your other foot on the fifth step but panic and go back to the fourth step, how do you think you will climb to the fifth step? Turning fast is also a process of look ahead, and pausing or having choppy solves when turning fast is completely normal. When you try standing up from crawling, you always fall down since you aren't used to it. Does that mean you should continue crawling since it's comfortable? Of course not. You should face the challenge and stand up until you can keep on standing. Babies have got this down impeccably. Their initial failure doesn't bother them and they continue to stand up until they can stand straight. Thus, continuing to only slow solve when you already have fluid and pause the solves is a foolish endeavor because your look ahead isn't going to be improving anymore. Kian had mentioned the same thing. When you're accustomed to solving slow and you suddenly start solving fast, your brain gets confused and mystified since it isn't used to turning fast. Take this as an opportunity to learn to turn fast and don't back down away from it. Problem with slow solving is that after a certain time, it gives diminishing returns. Your brain is already used to turning slow and it cannot learn anything new if you continue to slow solve, but you should increase your TPS and start getting used to the new TPS. However, here is where the next problem occurs. When you start turning fast, you will undeniably pause. Some people think the pauses will automatically go away and you only need to get used to turning at fast TPS. I was in the same boat when I realized that I needed to turn fast and not slow solve anymore. I went overboard with fast solving, kept on turning fast while keeping my pauses minimal. This did improve my times and I dropped a whole second from my times. However, in the long run, it was a bad decision. By the time my hands and eyes were used to the new TPS, my look ahead had already gone rotten. For improving my look ahead, I started slow solving and I went back to my previous slower TPS, which gave diminishing returns since I was already used to that TPS. This is a loop. You turn fast, your look ahead falters, look ahead becomes bad over time, you slow solve to rectify your look ahead and you get used to your slow TPS, and your look ahead skills are not carried forward to your faster TPS. I spent a fair share of my time revisiting this loop. If you look at my previous solves, my initial slow turning solves were fluid, then I started turning faster and had pauses, and I continued turning faster, keeping a track of the pieces and hoping that my lookahead will automatically catch up, but my lookahead did not increase. However, I found a way to break this loop, and if you look at my recent solves, my lookahead during blocks is relatively fluid while I maintain my higher TPS. This is where I don't agree with Kian that fast turning improves lookahead. Fast turning does help, but you need to counter your lack of lookahead when turning fast. Your brain and eyes are already used to slow TPS, thus exposing yourself to the same stimulus isn't going to help you get results. This was mentioned by Kian as the law of biological accommodation. It states that when you expose yourself to constant or unchanging stimulus, your brain gets tremendously used to it, and you won't improve further unless you change the stimulus. The change in stimulus here is turning fast, but when you turn fast, your lookahead becomes bad, and if you continue turning fast with bad lookahead, you're solidifying bad practice techniques and habits, which isn't desirable and counterproductive in the long run. What is the solution then? The answer is progressive overload. Progressive overload is a bodybuilding technique which places stress over the body, which you gradually increase over time. It was developed by Thomas Delorme during World War II while he rehabilitated soldiers. For understanding progressive overload, I will mention the example of Milo of Croton, who was a Greek wrestler during 6th century BC and won various athletic festivals which showcased his strength. The legend says that for strength training, Milo bought a calf and carried it on his shoulder every day and fed the calf until it became a full-sized bull. He kept on carrying the calf, transitioning to a bull on his shoulder every day. As the calf became a bull, its weight increased progressively, and as Milo carried the progressive weight on his shoulder, he got used to the new weight, and his strength increased as a result. I use the same concept for lookahead practice. If your current limit is 5 TPS, then you shouldn't be turning at 5 TPS, since it is meaningless as you are already used to it. You should start overloading yourself and start turning at 5.5 TPS or even 6 TPS while trying to maintain your lookahead. Don't worry too much about pausing excessively. Try to keep your pauses minimal, and remember, it's okay to pause in the short term as long as you're not making it a bad habit. Do 12 solves where you turn fast and take a break. With the first average of 12, you have overloaded your brain with faster TPS and changed the stimulus, thus allowing your brain a chance to improve its tracking speed for lookahead. Come back later and do 12 solves of slower solving where you try to maximize lookahead. This seems counterproductive since you go back to slow turning, but it makes sure that your lookahead skills get carried over to faster TPS. For slow turning, don't turn too slow as if trying not to pause. Go at a normal TPS and be vigilant about looking ahead and tracking pieces. Take a break. Till now, you did one session of fast turning, emphasizing turning fast and trying to get used to faster stimulus. In the next session, you are trying to keep the reins on your lookahead in your control, so that even though you're turning fast, your lookahead skills will be carried forward. Continue this process of 12 solves of fast turning, break, and then doing slow turning, and you allow your brain to improve since you are changing the stimulus, while you also make sure that your lookahead isn't going bad or you're creating bad practice habits. You can also increase number of solves from 12 to 24 or even 50 if you wish. You can also do one day of slow solving and the other day of fast solving. You can switch it up. Your brain gets adjusted to the increasing TPS while you also simultaneously allow your brain to not lose its lookahead capability. You can change your routine and do one solve fast, one solve slower, and alternate between fast and slow, and basically increase TPS while you also make sure that your lookahead is being dragged along with it. Currently, I'm of the opinion that slow turning, which emphasizes lookahead, and fast turning, which emphasizes TPS, should be balanced and have harmony and synergy between them. Slow solving isn't overrated, and fast solving is also not overrated. What matters is forming a balance. If you're on the extremes of the spectrum, you will not improve, and will get diminishing returns and solidify bad habits, which is quite cumbersome to change down the line. Why it's good to be in the middle and alternate between slow and fast and allow your brain to adjust to the changing stimulus while you maintain a balance. The next problem here is that people want fast results. They start doing this sort of alternative practice and they want to achieve max spark TPS and lookahead skills in 3 days when they cannot even turn at 3 TPS with pauseless fluid lookahead, and they blame the method, practice technique, or externals for the frustration. The only tip here is to be patient and persevere. When I was testing out this progressive overload method on myself, it took me a month to get consistent results and smooth lookahead at relatively high TPS. Even with that, it is still not perfected. Thus, expecting overnight success is gearing up for failure and upset. You want your look ahead to become a subconscious habit, so that your brain automatically starts tracking pieces without you constantly telling it to do so. This subconscious habit takes time to build, practice, and form. As such, be patient and diligently practice, and results are just beyond the horizon. A stream of water cuts through a rock not by its power, force, or pressure, but by persevering. You can reach the look ahead capability of world-class cubers, but it will take time to do so. Wait. Apart from practicing, another thing I recommend doing is blind if-12 solving, which is keeping your eyes closed and solving whatever case you get. I go over practice techniques for improving look ahead in a separate video, which I'll link in the description. It is a must watch according to me and has helped me tremendously. Do it for some time and you will see the results. Progressive overload doesn't stop at look ahead and TPS. You can even use it for inspection planning and other creative uses. If currently for CFOP you're planning cross +1, then you can start planning cross +2 and your brain will get slowly used to the overload. For RU, if you're comfortable with planning FP plus DR, then you can overload and force yourself to find a pair for second block during inspection. Progressive overload is a useful concept and you can apply it not only for cubing but also for other activities as well. For music, if you're playing a violin and you're already comfortable in playing the piece at 70% of normal tempo, then continuing to playing at that speed will be useless. You should start playing at 80% until you can play at 100% tempo. Go beyond your comfort zone. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That is where you grow and improve. These are basically my thoughts on the topic of look ahead and if you should turn fast or slow solve for improving look ahead. Neither slow solving nor fast solving is overrated. What matters is forming a balance between them, like yin and yang. I will be making some more videos on look ahead, practice techniques, and what to keep in mind for improving look ahead. So be on the lookout for my future videos and press the bell icon so that you can get notified when I upload newer videos. Subscribe for more cubing content and I will see you in my next video. Take care guys, and April Fools.